Did you
All right.
ever you're much more of a visual artist than I am. Can you draw?
No.
Okay. But you can
No, I'm
graphic
a
design. You can quasi graphic design, right? And you can
well,
Photoshop.
I'm one of those people they call a UX designer, which means I have no visual design skills. But my skill ceiling is very low on that though. Like actual proper UX designers and actual proper visual designers are like way up here, but I can fake it.
I'm not sad because honestly, our skill level across the board with everything that we've been doing on this project is probably close to the same ceiling. So
Oh, we're good, yeah.
yeah, we're amateur for life, DIY baby. What we're looking at is, boy, we're jumping right into it. None of that banter that we normally engage in.
Gosh. Do we have what we should banter?
You didn't play any video games this weekend because you were camping.
I was camping, yeah. I played
No
no video games. I watched the
Nintendo
football. My
Switch.
my
No.
team won. No Switch, no.
Okay. Wait, you watch football? Okay, let's hear your football. Let me hear your sports takes. We don't
My
talk
sports
enough.
takes.
We don't talk enough about sports.
Oh yeah, I mean my sports takes are that the New Orleans Saints are the best team in football, and will definitely win the Super Bowl this year.
Uh,
100%.
are both of those things true, or are you saying the opposite of what is true?
Uh, it's, both of those things are possible. They're
I don't follow football, so like you can tell me whatever, and I'll believe you.
oh my sports team is actually like pretty good at football.
Okay.
Yeah, and they won their playoff game this weekend, so that means that there will be a playoff game next weekend as well.
I feel like a decade ago, or maybe a decade plus, the Saints were also consistently good and scary.
Yeah, same team basically. Well, same quarterback who's really good.
Okay. Who's the
This is
quarterback of the
probably his
Saints?
Drew Brees. It's
Yes.
probably his last year.
Oh, wow.
I think he's going to retire.
It's basically he's the kind of person that's like I want to be like in contention for being the best, and if I can't do that, I'm probably just not going to play.
Yeah, he also broke 11 ribs and punctured a lung in one game this year, and like took a couple weeks off. So like I think that might have been the thing where I was like, he was like, okay, I'm done. That was probably the hit I didn't need to take. So like, let's call it after this one.
Yeah, I feel like that's respectable. Plus, like football is really hard on your body, right?
Yeah, and he like came back from the broken ribs and punctured lung and is still doing it. So I'm just like, all right, like if you lose, that's fine. Like you seem like a pretty busted up dude.
Okay, so we know who you like. Who do you hate in football?
Oh, the Atlanta Falcons.
Okay.
Bunch of posers. Yeah,
The
yeah,
Falcons.
mortal enemies.
I see, and that's like a regional. That's like a regional rivalry.
Yeah, the South has like a big rivalry going on about that.
I see.
Yeah, also not a fan of Tom Brady in all his forms, just because he's a big old Trumpy dude.
Yeah, he's a Nazi.
He is a Nazi, and we're playing him. He's our playoff opponent next weekend. So
There's a I guess there's someone on chat called Demarco. He says,
oh, what's up, Danelle?
"Laughing my ass off. You got Dom going up on football."
Yeah,
No,
he's seen
I'm
it
encouraging
before.
him to talk about football. I really want to hear it right now.
Well, all I can say is, yeah, you can root for my team if you want to root against the Nazis this weekend. Fuck Tom Brady.
Wait, are you playing the Bucks? I know he's on the Bucks because Tom
We're
Brady
we're playing.
teams
Yeah,
are
the
okay.
the Bucks are our opponent. It's the first. It's the first playoff game between two quadragenarians, which means someone over 40.
Oh man, that's a cool word. I think I'm technically a quadragenarian right now by several months.
Oh shit, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But I'm not playing national. I'm not playing professional football, so
That's fair.
I think it's
Nor
fine.
should you.
Yeah,
Please don't.
exactly. I was, I was like, I think that's fine.
Wow, this thing really goes to town. So is this Gimbal Lock?
So I don't know what it is. I tried. It took me a couple tries to attempt to fix it. But we can talk about some of the code that goes in there.
Heck yeah.
Um, real quick, I started playing Red Dead Online last night.
Oh shit, I have a copy of that. Is it good?
It is promising, I would
Okay.
say.
Okay. I'll get
Um,
I'll get some Red Dead.
I played about 10 hours of the original Red Dead Redemption back in whenever,
Hmm?
and I really enjoyed it. And then I fell through the ground multiple times. Um, And at that point, I decided not to continue playing. Because like when you fall through the ground, like half my guy was sticking out of the ground, and I couldn't move anywhere.
It wasn't just infinite falling. It was like you were stuck in a pile of dirt.
Yeah, it was kind of Twilight Zone stuff, to be honest. Like it sort of struck a deep chord of like claustrophobia or something like that. At any rate, I stopped playing Red Dead Redemption. Um, I think it just, yeah, there's me. There you go.
This guy.
Oh no, wait, he's not halfway below the ground. I was
No,
like
no,
waist up
it's
in the ground. Um,
too bad. You're probably just this guy.
yeah, spiritually, yes. Um,
Mentally, I'm here.
so Red Dead Online, it throws you right in the middle of the action without explaining anything, and I'd say it's a bit of a hostile game to brand like completely new players. Like it doesn't tell you what buttons to press or anything like that. And it's like the menus kind of suck, and it has a bug where it turns the volume down like to 20% when you start the game. There's a lot of things that are like weird about that. It's really hard.
That doesn't sound like gameplay. That just sounds like they fucked up.
It's really hard to figure out how to play games with like your friends.
Hmm.
So they erected a lot of walls, but nonetheless, it's popular. People are playing it. It's basically like here's where the game succeeds is that you start off looking like a hobo motherfucker in that game. Like you start off in like your prison black and whites, and then you
Wow.
get basically the bottom of somebody else's closet. DeMarco's asked, "Wait, Dom, are you doing the network assignment in 3D?" Tank shooter
Wait, what?
multiplayer. He's asking, are we doing the network assignment in 3D? Is
Oh,
this a classmate or is this like a?
yeah. We went to school together. I didn't do that assignment. Wait, am I doing the
We might
network
be.
assignment in 3D? We might be.
He says it was 10 years ago. He doesn't expect you to remember.
Yeah, I mean, we do have. Where's my client? Oh wait, yeah, there we go. I mean, kinda.
Yeah, I
This
mean,
is multiplayer.
it is multiplayer. Yeah, we're kind of doing it.
Yeah. Boy, it feels real slow when it accidentally runs at 30 instead of 60.
Yeah,
That's
maybe we should
funny.
fix it. Yeah, we got a lot to do today. Do you want to fix that?
Mm, no, I kind of want to dig into this.
Okay,
I'm
let's dig into
feeling.
it.
I've still got GLSL in my head. So
So the purpose of this thing is just so we can type in shaders, and 3 seconds later it'll auto compile or it will fail.
mhm.
And it should reflect the changes in what you're seeing. So, for example, you can in fact change the alpha of the tank to like 0.5 if you wanted to, right? On line 10 there on the
Oh,
frag shader.
oh, interesting. Okay, so that can go to
And just
that.
wait. You don't need to save.
Just
Yeah. And now you've got alpha.
oh shit. Okay, cool. So this makes me wonder, can I pull in, well, I guess this depends on barycentric. So we don't actually have barycentric coordinates for the tank yet, but
We don't. Yeah. I think probably what's eventually going to happen if this tool succeeds is that we need a pretty rigorous naming convention for both attributes and uniforms
mhm,
so that all
mhm.
shaders basically will use the same names of things. Um,
Let that cat out of here.
yeah,
Yeah.
hot swappable 3D React tank, says DeMarco. It's almost there. I actually didn't use React
Getting
for
there.
this because I wasn't decorating any text and like I just didn't want to. I was just avoiding it, but I think we might
Man,
get
that is
there.
that is the sickest React burn I've possibly ever heard. And I'm like the biggest React fan ever, but like, man,
Yeah.
that cuts me to the core. Whew.
Um, well, at any rate, we might need to do React because
Yeah,
I do want to show like when the text has been like you didn't see any actual feedback when you edited the fragment shader, for example, and it would be nice to have that in there.
I mean, I add React to every project we touch.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yep.
I tried actually doing React without JSX, so and no Babel as well. That I
Oh,
actually
interesting.
started off doing that because I
Isn't that the new React without Babel? That's like React
without JSX.
17? Yeah.
Oh, what the hell is this?
Uh,
How does it work?
yeah. It's like a new. Mm, no, I think it's like React 17 where you actually can include a header instead of using Babel and do your JSX
Ooh,
as just
that
like
hurts my
native
head.
JS.
What is it? What is actually in the transpile?
Oh man. I forget. It's like
Anyways,
yeah, React 17. I'll find it for us. But
okay.
yeah. We'll sort it out, but we can do it.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So just really quick, a couple things that are not about this tool whatsoever, but I basically wanted to make it possible to run the tool and the client at the same time. Remember, we broke all the tools at some point.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't ES build compatible either, so I needed to do a little bit of groundwork. So now if you look at the build, if you take a look at the build client, actually there's no build client anymore. Look for build web.
Build web. Let's see what we got here.
Yeah. So build web now, it basically writes a different bundle for every single thing in the entry points array. So if you do
Cool.
if you go into that and just look up what that is, it's right now just like nothing. It's just the
That's
client
great.
and tools Rendertoy, and those are all relative paths to the source directory, right? And
Cool.
then there's going to be a corresponding directory structure in the output folder that looks exactly the same way. So the client goes under out/client, and the tools will go under.
Client tools. Love it.
That is
Oh,
not the right
that's
one.
the old one.
That's the
Okay.
old one. Yeah, web client tools. Yes. Yeah. Um, and
Nice.
they emit JS if there's JS. ESBuild's cool. You can do CSS as well. It'll emit a CSS bundle when you import CSS through an import statement, which is
ESBuild
neat.
is so good.
Yeah, I think Parcel roughly worked the same way. But now that I've actually had to take a look at this stuff, it's actually pretty intuitive. It's just a sensible default. I
As
like
I
it.
say,
Yeah.
Parcel worked the same way, except
Mm.
that we had to import everything into one file because you couldn't have multiple entry points. So we had this like our tools are in this output folder because they're included somewhere on the page so that Parcel would load them. Like
Yeah.
multiple entry points was Parcel Scriptonite.
And if you look at the ES build in buildweb.ts, if you look at like the actual call to the bundler, it's pretty intuitive. You just say, "Hey, I've got multiple entry points, and I want you to emit them into this directory that I specify in line 40." And then it just like can tell that your entry point has a path in it, and it'll just say, "I'm going to match that structure when I shoot stuff out into the output folder."
This
Oh
is
yeah,
great.
that's just because like ESBuild doesn't do HTML. Parcel does, but I didn't need it to do it. I just copied it over.
Nice, dude. Well,
Yeah,
cool. Okay, so we got working tools again.
we got working tools again. Okay, so this tool, it's pretty nice. I think we've structured our primitives well enough that like it's the basic structure of this tool is pretty simple. I guess we can go to the index.html under Rendertoy. This is not very exciting, but we've got some divs. And then we can go to main.ts. Setting up code mirror, that's the editor that I happen to use. The syntax highlighting leaves much to be desired.
Yeah, I wonder, is there a language? Oh no, there you go. See, like,
There might be a plugin out there that we can take a look at, and it
yeah,
may
this is
help
great
us.
though.
Yeah. And then we've got two editors, one for the vertex shader, one for the fragment shader. We listen to change events on both of those. That's lines 40 through 42. And then we make a renderer the same way that we make a renderer for the game. We have a resize listener just in case we want to like change the size of the window. And then there's an update function if you scroll below this one.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So this has the same kind of request animation frame structure that we had before. And then basically every time either the fragment shader or the vertex shader changes, we're going to just like write a timestamp to like when the last time that happened was. And
I love it.
what the update is checking for is that if that happened more than 3 seconds ago, then run a recompile. And the reason why we're looking for 3 seconds is it's just like we don't want it to like recompile every time we make a keystroke or something like that, right? Because that change event fires pretty frequently. So
I love that we can just like, I gotta stop hitting save when I change the files, but like can really get in there and mess with the stuff going on here. This is super nice.
Yeah. So, sorry, I'm kind of flummy from dinner. Sorry, everybody.
Are you good?
The thing is, our build is fast enough now that like it competes with just this like in-window recompile. So pretty much all this like will do this sort of like in-browser recompile of the shader. What it does for you is preserves your camera angle, right? If you're like looking at a camera, like if you kind of have like mutated the view or whatever. Yeah, DeMarco says that GLSL is sufficiently overlapping with C that you can use the syntax highlighter, probably the C syntax highlighter, without really needing its own highlighter, which is true. I'm using the C-like theme, which is the one that I could find in CodeMirror that had GLSL keywords in it. It could be that I'm not including the right CSS file for this. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see Void Made not highlighting a little more.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well we can mess with it.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of modifications to the renderer class so that we can do the thing that we're doing right now.
Okay. 3D renderer?
3D render, yeah. If I can try to remember, I think all it is that load shader is now, I think, a public.
That makes sense, because you want to be able to, I assume recompile is actually just dropping fresh shaders in there.
And then at line 71, I added an option to say that like if the shader is already defined, normally you probably want to throw an exception because you're doing something wrong. But like in this case, we are intentionally trying to overwrite the shader that was there. So we're basically saying, okay, I want you to just use a different shader or override the shader that's already there. And then I made sure that we actually got the compiler errors. Remember how before we didn't see those? So basically now,
if I just do this.
Yeah, basically nothing's going to happen, and you'll see stuff in the console log.
Cool.
And probably want to emit that too. Ooh, sorry. I probably should have gotten rid of that.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's behind our faces right now, but you probably can see an error message in there, right?
The error is unfortunately undefined. What can I do about that?
Oh, interesting.
Okay, this maybe just typing random characters is an undefined error as far as this thing is concerned.
No, I think what we can do is try to get rid. Let's try and get rid of that console log that's spitting out the coordinates.
Oh, totally.
I think it's in yeah. It might be in camera.ts. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah. Okay. Kill that.
And then now you can just type a bunch of garbage into your frag shader, and it should, after 3 seconds, tell you what the error is.
Undefined.
Is it saying undefined?
Still says undefined.
Oh, you know what it is? Line 78 has a bug. It should say fragment shader log.
Oh, it sure should. Perfect.
There we go. And, as I was saying before, we can actually probably interpret that error and then even syntax we can highlight the line that's just apply CSS style to that line or something like that, right?
Totally, but this is great.
It doesn't need to have too many bells and whistles. This is a prototyping tool, but it will help us design the shader if we wanted it to. And I figure once we start working on wireframing and all that kind of stuff, it'd be nice to be able to,
Totally agree. I feel like a lot of our stuff is going to end up shader based for this, so it'll be nice to be able to run our. I mean, I can even imagine a drop down here where we could switch between different shaders we have in text files too to start from different dev points. It doesn't remember what I do when I refresh, does it?
There's no local storage there. That's another thing that we can think about doing.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. So you can imagine all the kinds of UI bells and whistles that we want to add in there. So this is as I mentioned earlier, this is kind of instructive thing on Gimbal Lock. Can you go to camera.ts? I wrote a couple different versions of this class, or at least a couple different versions of the code. I'm trying to remember what it actually is. Okay. This is probably going to demonstrate Gimbal Lock. If you reload the tool, and then if you click on the tank and then drag to the left, just slowly, and then once you hit about 90 degrees, I think that's when it starts to freak out, right?
Yeah.
Okay, keep going. And now it gets really hard, right? Is it gonna? Or maybe it's 180 in this version, or is it
Yeah.
still? Is it kind of getting wobbly on the?
Oh, it's wobbly as heck.
Okay, yeah. So once you get
Whoa!
there, it gets really weird. Um,
What? Why did it do that?
yeah. So I think this is actually probably going to be uh, easier to demonstrate on an earlier commit. If you scroll down in the code, I'm trying to remember what I did. If you scroll down to world to view, oh yeah, I've got this big long comment there.
Fair enough.
Oh yeah, so there's some. This is like the more complicated version that I attempted to fix this at.
Mhm.
The mouse started to get wonky when you flipped the tank like 180 degrees the other direction.
Mhm.
Uh, the commit before this one, the mouse gets wonky at 90 degrees, and that's actually a little bit easier to demonstrate what's going on. So if you check out the
Interesting.
previous commit, or at least look at the history, I'm trying to remember which commit it should be. Oh, this is Gimbal Lock non-fix. So this is the most recent commit. So if you go to like head tilde one, if you check out head tilde one, we'll get a version that
Mm,
or ooh, maybe scroll down a little bit. What's the non-fix there? So 4F2E is the one that we want. The one before that one, yeah.
great. I was just gonna revert this, but yeah.
Oh yeah, that's fine too. I don't know what else will change, but
Yeah, I'll check this out specifically because yeah. Add stash and check it out. All right, let's see what's going on in here. I love how fast this thing is. Okay, so this is as soon as I go 90 degrees, it should start.
yeah,
Wow. Huh.
yeah.
That's unexpected.
So what's interesting is if you go to the code in camera.ts and you scroll up to the input handling section, and then if we just comment out the change we make to on line 34, the when you move the mouse on the y-axis,
Mhm.
you just go ahead and comment that out, and that should automatically reload. And so that now it's not wonky at all, right? So you can tell,
Mhm.
and then if we do the reverse, where if we comment out the x-axis version,
Mhm.
um, now it's just your up and down mouse motion that will rotate it, and you're just gonna be able to rotate it pretty cleanly. Oh, by the way, do the axes colors make sense to you? It's just red, green, blue, X, Y, Z.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's interesting the way the colors are rotating, but otherwise, yeah.
yeah,
I feel like X and Y are swapping places here, or sorry, Y and Z are swapping places here sometimes.
yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, totally.
Okay, so
Looks like a 3D program.
the
So when you put these
wonkiness,
all together, though.
yeah, the wonkiness comes from when we do them both at the same time. And this was pretty an educational exercise for me because like I never really understood Gimbal Lock, and I wouldn't complain to understand it right now. But I understood it better doing this particular exercise.
Hmm.
So let me actually talk to you a little bit about like what clicking and dragging is actually supposed to simulate.
Mhm.
The idea here is that the axes are the world origin. Like they do show you the world origin. It shows you the tank relative to that. So when we
Mhm.
click and drag, we're not actually mutating the tank's transform. We are moving the camera. So I think that's the mental model that you should have in your head is like we're in a camera that's floating around a stationary object, right?
Yeah, and this tracks for that too, because like yeah, I'm seeing that the plane it's on is actually attached to the object.
Yeah. Um, Now, ironically, I actually think that the thing that we're trying to accomplish would have been easier if I had just rotated the tank locally, or like around the origin. But I kind of stubbornly refused to do that. So, what we're looking at in terms of this class is a few variables that represent the current position of the camera. If you go to the private member variables, this is the top of the
Mhm.
class. We have a distance, an angular offset, and a view translation. Um, lines 7 and 8, you can think of as spherical coordinates. It's not 100% analog to spherical coordinates, but actually, if you want to go to Miro, I've got my whiteboard open. I can just draw real quick
Yeah.
what some of this stuff is doing.
To the Miro. Let's do it.
I had to look up what spherical coordinates were. This is actually my one pet peeve about Miro, is that like it's hard to tell where everybody is.
I can go to your cursor.
Yeah.
I can see your view. Oh, I can see your whole view. That's clever.
Oh, you can.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Just following you now.
Nice. That's perfect. Okay, never mind. Miro, my faith in you is restored. So I think spherical coordinates, I had to review this. I don't actually remember very well like how it worked exactly. Basically, there's this idea that you have a point on a sphere, right, in 3D space. And you have, I forget what this is called. Is this your theta? And then like this much is your omega. And I don't remember what this, I think it's R. Basically, you have 3 values that basically tell you where you are in 3D space. And so instead of using an XYZ coordinate, you are using like how much you're bending away from the vertical axis, how much you're bending around the vertical axis, and then the distance of the radius going from the origin.
Okay, so it's coordinates within a sphere, not like on the surface of a sphere, but like inside a spherical system?
If you only modify theta and omega, you will follow the surface of a sphere.
Right, but the R value is what lets you sort of like, yeah, okay, yeah.
And the reason why this is a useful representation is basically it depends on like what you're doing to change these variables. If you're just changing angles, then this is a much more convenient representation than just using X, Y, and Z. Because if you're changing angles and then had to like convert it to X, Y, and Z, you got to do all this trigonometry, right? So I think without realizing it, I kind of reinvented this system. Only what the camera is doing.
This is actually great. The stream is just following whatever you do. So
awesome. I think that what I actually ended up doing is actually something that looks a little bit more like. It looks a little bit more like this angle, like how much you're lifting off of the XZ plane, right? Because this is X, Z, and Y. How much you're lifting off the XZ plane. I think I still have this notion, and then I have like a distance.
Yeah.
So I have angle 1,
like
angle 0, angle 1, and distance. That's basically how I did it. So like I kind of forgot how to do this stuff, but that's essentially the representation that is in the camera class.
I feel like since this is happening at 9D and 180, like, are we hitting some sort of like pi negation or something where we're like, yeah, at a certain point,
yeah, so
the angle is the same as the other angle on the other side and it rotates the whole way?
When we talk about Gimbal Lock, people talk about it in reference to Euler Angles. And Euler Angles is when you represent an orientation by a series of rotations around the global axes. So you have an angle around the x-axis, angle around the y-axis, angle around the z-axis. In this case, basically when you move the mouse cursor left and right, you're panning the camera around the y-axis, right? It's around this vertical axis, and you're spinning around the origin that way. And then when you move, except when you get past 90 degrees, when you move the mouse up and down, you are actually doing a rotation around the x-axis, which is the red line.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. But I guess the way you're composing them is what's causing this to be.
Yeah. So let me show you what the Gimbal Lock actually is. Because if you look at the source code,
Mhm.
And then you scroll down to world to view. What I'm
Yep.
starting with is line 49. I'm saying, okay, where is the camera? Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, by the way, just really quick, this dot distance, dist, that's just what the scroll wheel manipulates, and that's an uncontroversial kind of implementation. It's pretty trivial.
That's what I figured. Yeah,
Yeah,
that seems like the easy input just to mess with
exactly.
this.
Yeah.
Ooh. And it's very fast.
Oh, I did not try this with a trackpad, so I'm sure that the trackpad has different characteristics.
It's delightful. I'm glad you put a maximum and a minimum here because it just zips between them.
Yeah. Um, so line 49 through 51. Let's talk about what's going on there.
Mhm.
Um, basically, what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, I've got a vector, and I want the vector from the origin pointing to the camera. So it's almost like the opposite of the look ray, like the orientation that the camera is looking down. It's basically what is the position of the camera right now? So the camera is facing down the negative z-axis, which means that if we want to see the tank, we need to actually be towards the positive z-axis, right? So now we're
Mhm.
actually the camera's sitting somewhere like on the positive z axis right now, facing down negative z. So that's what line 49 is initially. But then I
Mhm.
say, like, basically your mouse movements are going to modify your angle around the y-axis and your angle around the x-axis. And that's what
Mhm.
angular offset 0 and angular offset 1 is. So your angular offset 0 is what horizontal motion with the mouse controls, and that rotates you around the y-axis. Is a little bit confusing. And then uh, vertical mouse motion is what rotates you around the x-axis, and that's what line 51 is about, right?
Mhm.
So here, line 50 and 51 is exactly where the gimbal lock problem is that we rotate fully by whatever our rotation around the y-axis is first, and then we
Mhm.
rotate fully for the x-axis. And
Hmm.
those rotations are in global space. So we're not rotating like initially line 50 is rotating the model in around the global y, which happens to be the same thing as the model's local y initially.
Mhm.
But then on line 51, we are rotating the whole model around the global x-axis. Um, and this is where it kind of gets a little bit funky. Let me draw a picture of this. So I'm gonna switch to Miro one more time.
Yep.
Um, and this drawing's gonna be a little bit challenging here. But let's imagine that we have an object that is like kind of like the tank. It's like pointing off towards the negative z-axis.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna make the object like I'll just make it like a kind of like a rectangle or something like that. I want to make it not an arrow, basically. Um,
Totally.
imagine like a strip that's there. And imagine that we have a y rotation value of 90, which is
Mhm.
which is where we are start where which is where the mouse starts to get funky, right? It actually starts to get funky even before that, but um, like we can really notice it when we turn the tank like this 90 degrees, right?
It's what's so weird to me is that like if I rotate 45 degrees and then start going on the Y,
It's
I
also
guess it
it's gonna
feels
be a
weird.
little bit weird. It's gonna
It
be a little
doesn't
bit
feel right.
weird,
Yeah.
but you notice it most at 90 degrees, or at least it's easiest for me to explain this at 90 degrees, and it starts to go
It's hard to
yeah,
ignore at 90
yeah.
degrees.
And let's say our x rotation is anything that's like anything non-zero, like 30 degrees, right?
Mhm.
Um, what I was going for. Well, let me show you what's actually going to happen to this thing. Okay, let's say we initially rotate it 90 degrees around the y-axis. That's this way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to end up looking like this. So now when we rotate around the global X, what you're doing is just rotating it around the global X-axis. And that's not what we were going for.
Yeah, okay.
So imagine if I reverse the ordering of those, right? If I reverse the ordering of those, actually, for the sake of demonstration, let's actually say that we're rotating 90 degrees around both axes, right? That's actually the clearest thing. If I started off rotating around the x-axis 90 degrees, this thing would go this way, and then it would be up here, right?
Now, is the goal? We want to have a system where these two actually compose the same, no matter which order we put them in, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
we're trying to describe a point in space.
Exactly. What we actually want is the spherical coordinate version of that, right? So what we actually want is the thing that is, 90 degrees this way. 90 degrees this way. And also like 90 degrees up this way, right? I mean, we basically want something that, well, I don't know what 90 degrees on both are at that point, right? That's actually kind of like a weird philosophical question. Right? What does it mean if you're 90 degrees on both of those?
Yeah.
Like what point on the sphere are you talking about? So where we get Gimbal Lock is that like we can get to this point, like as you incrementally move towards this, the having your angles as represented as having your orientation represented as rotations around the x-axis and the y-axis separately is just going to like accumulate a more and more inaccurate representation of what you're looking for.
Right.
So generally the workaround for this is that what you do is rather than represent your rotation using like the offset from the neutral position to wherever you are, you like basically use a single number or single complex number to represent your current orientation and then incrementally modify that. So either you use a rotation matrix. So that's what some people do, is they use the rotation matrix and then they locally modify the rotation matrix as the mouse moves around, which is not what I'm doing, right? What I'm doing is
right. You start from zero every time instead of adding x and y nudges with the motion. So that makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense why we have this problem. And yeah, I think in terms of like moving around in a 3D model, I kind of feel like it's like putting my hand on a globe and like spinning it instead of like reorienting around axes, but like rather I'm kind of like moving a ball that's, I don't know.
Yeah, so if you can think of a way of doing it, I took a couple different shots at doing this. But the fundamental problem here is that I think there's actually a couple problems that are fundamental. The first problem is that we need a way to represent the rotation, the orientation that is already accumulated in the orientation value rather than it being like a rotation from neutral. Right. Yep. And so either you use a rotation matrix for that, or you use a quaternion, right? People often say that quaternions help you avoid gimbal lock. That is not strictly true. It's that using Euler angles gets you into gets you into gimbal lock, and quaternions are not Euler angles, right? So that's kind of basically it. So if you pull a branch, if you grab a branch called Rendertoy-quat.
Check out Rendertoy quat.
Yeah.
Got a stash again.
This is my attempt to fix it. And weirdly, I used the sphere instead because I was trying to figure some stuff out.
Now, what is the pink line?
The pink line, let's ignore that really quickly for now, and then I'll explain to you what the point is of that.
Okay.
I'm not. This probably feels a little bit wonky. I'm not sure 100% what you're feeling right now, but
Hey, can I change it back to the tank?
Yes, you can. Look for sphere and go to tank. The sphere is kind of like hard to tell
Yeah,
where you're
I
turning it.
think I felt it, but yeah, it was hard
Yeah.
to get a sense. All right.
I think it's at 180 that it starts to feel wonky, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's still right there. Weird.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what this is doing instead is if you look at where I'm reading mouse inputs, I'm sorry, you can change that to tank. You can keep it that tank. It's a lot easier to tell, like, because the tank actually has noticeable features, right?
Yep.
Um, so what's going on here is that when I'm reading mouse clicks, rather than accumulating the deviation into like an Euler angle, I'm
Mhm.
actually directly applying incremental rotations to the current orientation, which is represented by a quaternion. If quaternions are
Mm.
confusing, just think of that as a rotation matrix, because
Yep.
that's
Yep.
basically what it is. It is the compressed form of a rotation matrix. Um, so
Hmm.
I think this is fine. The very confusing function to me is line 33 and line 34. I actually don't know the answer to the question I'm about to ask you, which is like, is this quaternion rotation, does it rotate the quaternion around its local y-axis and around its local x-axis, or does it rotate the quaternion around the global x-axis or global y? Does the distinction between local and global make sense to you?
Not for this case, because the quaternion is starting at 0, right?
Yeah.
So shouldn't it be the same?
It doesn't. It starts at 0, but then it's not 0 the next. If you've moved it, it's not 0 the next time you get into this code.
Oh,
Right.
I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So once you've rotated, oops, oh no. Once you've rotated around X here, right, what is this doing?
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I actually don't think that the problem is here in this code. So now let me explain to you what that rotating pink line is doing.
Okay. Is it weird that these X and Y's are backwards, by the way?
Uh, it is not, because basically
Oh, because yeah.
it's just the way that you intuitively control a mouse, right? When you drag left or right,
Right.
also on the horizontal
Dragging
axis.
dragging yeah, up and down is rotating over X. Yeah.
Yep,
Still a brain fuck.
it's a constant brain fuck. Yeah. So what that pink line
Hmm.
is I was trying to see if you continuously call rotate X on a quaternion, does it trace out a great circle, or does it trace out
Hmm.
some weird looping pattern that has actually happened? Like, because like if you go ahead and I think if you go ahead and comment out line 34, and what happens if you keep clicking and dragging? Oh, it doesn't do the weird rotation, so it still might be.
Whoa. It gets weird.
Does it get weird?
It's weirder than before. Yeah.
Okay.
Huh.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm able to change the direction in a way I wasn't before.
Right.
Interesting.
What I was trying to figure out is basically like, I wasn't sure if rotate X and rotate Y for the quaternion was rotating it from the, was it rotating it like, if you imagine like from the quaternion represents an orientation in global space,
Hmm.
but if you're in that local frame of reference, imagine you're in like an X-wing or like you're a spacecraft, right? In your local
Hmm.
frame of reference, you still want to like rotate around your own local Y or your own local X, right? And that's what you do with the mouse, is that you actually still want to continue to rotate that around that frame of reference. Um, so the structure of this is still rotating a vector that points away from the origin, right? Basically, we're rotating a ray around the origin that places the camera, right?
Mm.
And what I was trying to determine it was like, when I basically scroll the click and drag to the left, I basically want to move the ray looking out from the origin in a left direction that is local to that ray, right? So my like its y-axis is kind of pointing out at an angle. Like if it's elevated off the xy plane, that vector, its vertical axis is no longer aligned with the world's vertical axis, right? It's kind of tipped backwards a little bit, right? Um, are you following so far, or am I just like talking into?
I am, but
Eh?
I'm trying to imagine how to unfuck this. It's really hard.
Yeah. So I think part of the problem is, well, actually, if you look at the code that's commented out, I try this. That was my attempt to unfuck it, and it's even worse. This is assuming that rotate quat.rotate y is a global rotation.
Mhm.
And so what I said was, okay, let me make a y rotation that I localize into that orientation space by multiplying it by that orientation. So if you see, like, line 41 says, here's my global rotation. This is what it's attempting to say. There's line 41 is my global rotation around global y, but I want to translate that into the space of the outgoing vector. So I multiply it by the camera's orientation. And then on line 50, that's where I take that new vector and modify the camera's orientation with that.
Mhm.
I don't understand quaternion math like clearly enough to know what's going on there. It's almost like it's multiplying it by the camera orientation multiple times. If you actually like write out the composition of those things.
Mhm.
Um,
this one just goes off the
yeah, so
rails,
I think
right?
it's just wrong, right? Like that's clearly just wrong, right? It's just doing something super wacky.
Which is too bad because like I like it.
Yeah. It makes some amount of sense, but I'm pretty sure that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, this is what I would have tried. What I would have tried first is to just apply them incrementally on each axis and go to town. But
Yeah. Um,
okay. Well, regardless, I mean, this works well.
yeah.
I'm okay if we can't quite rotate it perfectly.
Yeah. Well, it'll basically be kind of a work in progress on what we can do to fix it. For the
Yeah.
pink line,
Mhm.
what I want to do with the pink line, there's in the update function, we should have something that's animating the pink line. The render wire right here. Actually, if you keep scrolling down,
Mhm.
this is it. We rotate around the y-axis by a small amount. Let's actually add a
Mhm.
rotate x as well.
You got it.
And it's basically by the same amount. And what I wanted to be able to see, if you can sort of like, yeah, move it a little bit. What I was trying to eyeball with this is that tracing out a circle, like a great
Mhm.
circle around a sphere, or is it taking some weird, wonky, wobbly path around the surface of the sphere?
Yeah, it's not clear to me from this.
It's a little bit hard to tell, right? Um, the reason why I cared about that is that if you think about it, this rotate X and rotate Y is, I'm actually doing the math of, I was basically trying to just like visualize the position of the camera as it gets moved around. Um, and
Yeah.
if you think about it, that vec3, that this line 140, is essentially the ray that I'm creating to position the camera, right? If you remember that math that I had before in the
Mhm.
world to view function, I'm just saying, like, give me a ray from the origin to some position out there. And then what I'm going to do is rotate that ray by an incrementally larger amount over time. Temp line is an
Mhm.
orientation. That's a really, really bad, it's a really, really bad variable name. It's an orientation of that pink line. Um, so it looks smooth to me. So that pink line looks smooth. And therefore, I would have assumed that whatever we're doing with the mouse should also be smooth as well. That was basically why I drew this pink line. Is I was trying to say, like, I'm going to emulate the math. Like, is there a way I can visualize what what camera position looks like on the surface of a sphere? That's what I was doing with this. Um,
Yeah. Hmm.
and to me, it doesn't look like it's, if it's deviating like along the great circle that it's tracing, it's not deviating by much, right? It looks pretty smooth.
Hmm.
Um,
Dang. Okay. Yeah,
so
this is.
I would have guessed that basically the mouse would be doing the same thing and we'd be able to replicate that, but the mouse clearly is not. Right? Like the mouse, like once you drag it to 90 degrees or 180, it just starts to freak out.
Yeah, too bad.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay.
So it leads me
I
to
wish.
believe that there may be a problem in the math at the bottom of world to view.
Down here.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So basically everything from line 68 to line 84, it makes me think that maybe I'm doing something wrong here.
Hmm.
So we know what the position of the camera is. That's what we basically just take that ray on line 61 and then just transform it by the camera by the orientation. That's basically the
Hmm.
thing that we've been accumulating the entire time. And then what we want to do is that's the position of the camera, but now we want to know what the orientation is of an object at that position looking down the same ray towards the origin. And so that line 68 to 84 is just an entire thing to reverse that whole thing. I would have thought it was the inverse of the quaternion, but it turns out not to be. So I had to like
Hmm.
basically use whatever functions were available to me in GL Matrix to reconstruct that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Damn, dude. I wish this were clear. I will play with this because I feel like
Please
yeah.
do. Like you might have a brainstorm that I don't. Like I kind of like for me it was just like me staring at it for a couple hours in a row, going like I can't figure this out right now. But
Hmm. Yeah. You've tried a lot of stuff though.
yeah.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
last thing I'll say about this, you know how earlier I said it would be easier if we were just rotating the model with a transform. The
Yep.
reason why that's easier is that essentially the camera would be fixed,
Hmm.
and you would have a quaternion representing the rotation of the tank, but you'd basically just be rotating that quaternion by either uh, you'd have a fixed rotation for that
Hmm.
quaternion every time you clicked and dragged it. It would either be what like around the vertical axis of where the camera is facing or the horizontal axis where the camera is facing. It'd be stable that way. So it would be easier to basically just like click and drag and rotate the object. But I chose to represent the position of the camera rather than the rotation of the object. Um,
Hmm.
and that's where we're stuck at today. Right, so that's it.
Gotcha. Ah, man, you've it's a good nerd snip because I want it to solve it this way now instead of knowing there's the simpler, easier way.
I think that's basically the same thing I'm stuck on. Because like I honestly though, like we should be able to figure this out. Because if you think about it, like we may want to have a camera that's floating above the player and that you rotate with the mouse, right? That's a very common thing, and it would be nice
Right,
to know how to implement that.
it's the exact same problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. All right, back to this. Well. What should we do next?
Do you want to try to plug ahead on wireframe stuff?
Yeah, let's give that a shot. And we can maybe use this as the basis for it that we're going to have to feed this a couple more things, right?
Yeah.
So let's see. Looking at what we had last time. Oh, and I can just open this file.
Yeah.
Boom. It's so pretty.
Yeah.
Love it.
Majestic.
Majestic. Like that cube is.
You can tell it's rotating at
Just,
half speed, right? From before.
I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. So we are passing barycentric coordinates through our shaders.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need our Rendertoy to at least accept that parameter. And I think actually the way we sort of thought of pre-processing was to use barycentrics in a way that we could get away with this. And actually, I kind of want to just try that now. Where do we feed these in? Here it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to say that the wireframe shader we're going to do is that if you have the same normal, we just feed 0 into the coordinate, right? So that's actually just doing this. And that doesn't work. Bummer.
I think that there are two things that we were going for. If you have a common edge, the idea was that okay, just to back up, there was two issues. One was that we wanted to draw wireframe lines from the fragment shader rather than drawing line primitives. Although line primitives, I'm still kind of like still there, but like we're exploring a different direction right now.
I'm still open to it too, but
Yeah.
I just want it to be in the shader, damn it.
Yeah. So what we would do here is like this implementation says that like if any of your barycentric attributes in the fragment shader are close to 0, you'll have one on the x-axis, one on the y. You'll have basically 3 of them. Like it's basically your distance from a corner, right? And if any of them are 0, that means you're close to an edge, and so we're gonna draw a pixel there rather than drawing nothing.
Correct.
Oh, by the way, if you want to enable alpha, you can enable alpha by copying the 2 blend function lines that are in the render.
Oh yeah,
there you go.
I do want to enable that. Let's see. Where do we do depth? Let's just drop that in right there.
Yeah. So let's actually talk about what these 2 lines are doing. The first one just enables the blending system to begin with, and then line 204 is saying, what is my multiplier for the source color? So that's the color that's actually drawing on top of what's already there, right? And then the second argument into that blend function is like, what is my multiplier for the destination color? Because I'm going to basically apply a multiplier to the source color, apply a multiplier to the destination color, and then add them together, right? And OpenGL, for some reason, gives you an amazing amount of flexibility. The default for those 2 values is 1 and 0. So that's not going to do any blending at all, right? On line 204.
That's funny.
But so what it's doing is it's saying, I'm going to take the source alpha value, multiply by the source color, which is the color that's coming in, being painted on top. And then I'm going to take 1 minus that alpha value for the source pixel, and then multiply that times the color that's already there in the color buffer. And now I'm going to add those 2 together. Is that not working for us?
It's not working though. Yeah, unless I'm. Is it like not the right color? Yeah, I would have expected to be able to see through this cube by now.
Yeah, I think I agree with you.
And it's like, interesting. So it's doing, I feel like this actually did get transparent. I was looking to see, like, should I bring in the rest of the depth test we're doing here too? Because this is actually a slightly different one. We just have depth test and call face, but not the rest of the attributes set here.
Yeah, we can try to do that. I'm not sure if it matters for the alpha blending.
Well, I guess if it's not drawing anything behind this, it can still be alpha blending, but like to nothing.
No, but it is drawing the background color, right? So we should be trying to mix against the background color.
That's what it looks like. Yeah, let me see if I can change that to. Is that our clear color? Yeah, totally. So if I start making this wonkier colors, yeah, it's totally drawing against that. Annoying. Why are you doing that?
Can we make the background color like a very stark color, like magenta or cyan? If you're tired of magenta.
Oh yeah. I am a little tired of magenta, so I made it magenta.
So the alpha's working, right?
The alpha's working, yeah.
If we
can't see through it.
Oh, are you saying we can't see the back edges? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. That's expected because we did turn on backface culling, right? So if we disable backface culling, then yeah.
Fucking weird. That's not what I expected. That's just bonkers. Okay.
Alpha is tricky because with alpha, you need to make sure that you're drawing the front faces. You need to actually sort your geometry when you tell the GPU to draw them.
Gotcha.
Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
Cool.
always super tricky. So I think probably the way that games are actually made is like all the windows get drawn last. It doesn't matter where they are in the scene; they just draw the windows last.
Oh, that's really interesting.
And you want to
Yep.
make sure if that one window is in front of another window relative to the camera that you draw the back one first, or else you're going to get weird effects, right? Yeah.
Cool. But yeah, okay. That's definitely doing the thing.
And I think what you're looking at is okay because I don't think we ever wanted to actually draw. We don't actually want to draw rear geometry of a wireframe, right? That's not the effect that we're necessarily interested in, right?
No, I was mostly just curious about being able to like play around with that effect, but this is great.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have alpha at all. And that I think you're right about the sorting. Cool. Sorry. So that takes us back to
two major questions, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the first question was how do we draw the lines, which we figured out. That's how we got barycentric coordinates. The next question is how we draw, how we remove edges, shared edges within the shader. And
yeah, and I realized that passing as soon as one of the barycentric coordinates is all zeros, I think since we're looking for any value to be one, every point has an any value of one.
Yeah.
It seems like as soon as something collapses down to zero. Yeah.
Does the diagonal look double thick to you, or is that just an optical illusion?
I think it is an optical illusion.
Okay.
It looks.
It makes sense to me that it would be double thick because we'd be drawing on both sides of the line.
Let me stop rotating it real quick. Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So that's not a huge issue for us because we're thinking about removing that edge, but that is a disadvantage of the barycentric coordinate method of drawing, or at least just as simply as we've implemented it right now, right?
Yeah, I guess. Do we have another option? We could be doing quads.
We can't. The WebGL is closer to what the GPU is actually doing, and the GPU is just like I do triangles. Sorry, friend.
Yeah. Fair.
So the edge removal thing that we talked about last time was that we'd actually add yet another attribute on top of this, which is basically saying that if the attribute value is 1, let's say, then the edge opposite that vertex would have a value of 0, right? So basically, we're saying if we want to remove a particular edge of a triangle and not draw it, we would set the opposite vertex's attribute, and let's just say it's like the edge removal attribute, to the value 1. And then our shader, what we would do is we say if the value of that attribute on this pixel is 0 or close to 0, don't draw any colors.
Sorry, I was trying to unrotate so I could actually see this.
Yeah.
And visualize it. Oh,
I can draw it out on the whiteboard too.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah. Okay, so this is saying Jeff view.
So
you say like for the points that share, yeah, they're on the shared line. Okay. So we set a value there to 1.
We set a value of 1 here if we want the opposite edge to disappear.
Okay.
I don't know if this is going to work actually now that I'm saying it out loud. Just to finish the thought though, there's only the attribute only has like 1 value, so it's a little bit unusual. Like all the other attributes we've dealt with is like it's like a vector value per vertex, right? It's either 3 positions in world space or it's 2 UV coordinates or it's 3 barycentric coordinates, right? In this case,
Mhm.
it's just the value 1. What when the fragment shader hits this line,
Mhm.
the value of that attribute should be 0, right? It'll be like 0.5 here,
Right.
right?
Okay, so it's another type of barycentric coordinate. I guess we could. We're basically saying, so like if we look at our barycentrics as individual points, we're saying passing basically a second array that says like 1, 1, 0. This is like a mask into the barycentric values, which
Can you
is
scroll
like,
down just a smidge?
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you. This is like a mask into the barycentric values for the triangle to say that like these two are on and like this one, forget about it. Like don't draw if that's the any.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to figure out a scheme that will still allow this line to draw.
Well, that line should be 1 over here, right?
So we'll set 1 here, and 1 here. Well, the problem is that if we set 1 on this vertex, then the value of that attribute will be 1 on this on the common edge again.
Right. Yeah. So here we're doing this any less than. Do you know what other options we have for this any function? Because I feel like what we want to be able to do is to look at not just like we're looking for all 3 points, but we want to be able to say like x, y, but not z.
I don't think you can. You need to add information to what we have in order for us to do this successfully. Right?
Okay.
Because if we just have a triangle, you want to draw all 3 edges, right?
Right.
But if we have this, we want to get rid of this edge. And the only way you know within the fragment shader is if you give the fragment shader a hint, which means we need to add attributes.
Totally. Yeah. Well, that's what I mean, and the initial thought was passing 0 into these would make them never show up as 1. Oh, actually.
Yeah, I see where you're going. I see where you're going here.
In fact, yeah, this was backwards for that approach, so this should be greater than. Let's see if I'm losing it. Oh, I don't know. Nothing renders. Okay. Is greater than maybe not a function.
I don't know actually. Let's see.
Unexpected const. That's probably on me.
Let me look it up.
Oh, that's. Oh, interesting. Okay. That turned out very different than I expected, actually.
What were you going for?
I was hoping to. Basically, I wanted the coordinates on these edges to approach 1, but for this value to actually be 0 down here, like for us not to.
Oh, I see. Just for that triangle is what you're basically saying.
Yeah, like right, and like I was just applying to the square because we have the same set for all of them, but being able to pass in like an empty coordinate to say like, actually, we don't need to worry about drawing that.
Yeah, let's reason it out. Let's take that theory. It's going to be specific to this geometry, but like if we look at the way that we're designing the barycentric coordinates, where's the shared edge again?
The shared edge is right, we have this written out. So we're doing. The shared edge is this one. So this gets. Oh, maybe I did it backwards. The 2 points that are shared.
There should be 2 points that are shared between this quad, right?
Right.
And it is.
Oh, we have to look at the indices. Sorry.
Yeah.
Right. It's 0 and 2. So 0, 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Let me draw this out in a new thing.
Yeah.
0 and 2, so that's 1 and 3. And Were our barycentric coordinates consistent? If you can I see them in the barycentric array there?
Yeah.
So 0 that's 1, 0, 0.
Mm-hmm.
And this is 0, 1, 0.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is 0, 0, 1.
0, 1. And 3 is 0, 1, 0. Right, because we wanted to pass them between the two triangles.
Yeah, 1 and 3 need to be the same, right?
Yeah. Is that true? Could we just hand it the same? Because since we're not doing anything across triangles, could we just hand it the 3 coordinates in order for every triangle to get the wireframe?
Yeah, so what we could do is we could say the the barycentric dot x plus the barycentric dot z is equal to 1, don't draw. Because that means you're on this edge.
If the x plus, if they equal 1 or if they equal 2?
If they equal 1. They can't
They
equal
equal
2.
1.
Because they're interpolated
I
between the
see.
two, right?
Because you're on that edge.
When you're over
and,
here, your barycentric coordinate is 0 0.5, 0, 0 0.5.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, right, because yep. Okay.
So just for this particular setup, this will work, I think.
Can we reduce that to, right? So what attribute do we have to pass in to tell a normal triangle not to render that edge? Because really we don't need this 4th coordinate for these. Like we can pass the same 3 barycentric into every triangle, right? And then we want to tell it triangle by triangle which edges we want off, and then this algorithm actually would take care of that.
Right. So if we just drew a triangle, I mean, if we just add another, if we let's just apply the same principle. If you want an edge not to draw, then this is challenging. Like what you could do is you could set attributes like this, right? And what that would do is that the value of the attribute would be 1 all along this line. And they would be from here to here. Let me use a different color.
Yeah, they'd be less than 1 for those axes, right?
With some amount of tolerance, right?
No, wait, okay. I think this is maybe the core GPU thing that I know and is being applied. But when we pass those values in at vertices, it doesn't matter what it is, it's going to interpolate it for the fragment shader for us. That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's madness.
It doesn't matter what it is. It's just linearly interpolates them because it's a flat surface that it can linearly interpolate across. And it's also it's also perspective correct linear interpolation as well. So perspective correct means it adjusts for the perspective transform. Yeah.
Wild. Okay, so we still need barycentric to be able to draw edges because we want to know when we're sort of at the.
Yeah, we don't want to draw the stuff in here, right?
Right. So we use barycentric coordinates to sort of draw the extremities of the triangle, but they're the same for every triangle.
Yes. And then we have the erasure attribute, right?
Yeah. That's workable. You want to try it?
Yeah, we can totally try it. And it should work for this as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna do this. We originally did this in 1 through. Oops. Come on. Let's see. I think I need to add 2 more points to this. Yeah, 24 by 3. Yeah, totally. Should be 8. Okay, so I'm expecting this. Oh, hang on. I should unfuck the thing I did. less than and 0.4.
Oh, we're
Interesting.
missing a berry face. You need to add line 142 below 143.
Okay. I was operate under the assumption that we could actually do these without having to do that. But maybe I'm tripping. Okay. Sorry, man. You gotta deal with my
Oh no,
fundamental
don't worry about it. I'm thinking.
GL brain farts
Yeah.
here. I guess I was hoping that barycentric would let us draw just the edges of any triangle. And I thought we picked this so we could, like, if I gave this 1 0 1 0 0 0 1 0 and 0 0 1, why does it care about the order for the second triangle? Oh, this is because we're reusing faces or reusing points. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we have to have an attribute for every single thing, and I think basically just what we were saying there is that we were missing attributes for the barycentric coordinate.
Oh yeah, I thought I added them back in by adding more Barry faces though, but you're totally right because
I'm not sure.
They need to be unique per vertex, which this one needs that. Okay.
Yeah. So we can do this a variety of different ways. Like like we can exploit this particular geometry and this particular arrangement of barycentric coordinates to say that, what did we say? I'm just looking back at the whiteboard, that if the x and the z values add up to 1, then we're on a diagonal, and then we can like elide those. But that's very specific to this particular mesh, right? But if we wanted to be more generic, so we can draw a full triangle if we wanted to, then we would use a separate attribute. This is a whole nother array. And we call it the erasure attribute. And we would set the value to 1 on the opposite points of an edge we want to eliminate. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah. And I guess we have to do this sort of by hand for this one again too, huh?
I think we can emulate the thing that we're doing with berry face, because we can kind of like logic it out. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So we could do erasure and cube erasures, right? And then
yeah.
And then basically it would be, the erasure would be a 4-element array, which is 1 0 1 0.
1 0 1 0. So we're erasing. I guess if we start at this point, we're saying, right, that's on, that's off, that's on, that's off.
Yeah. How do I change colors in this?
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's just that if I change colors, I change thicknesses as well.
It's because like these 3 colors have a like thickness slider when you click on them a second time.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so you can have like little pre-built pens, I think.
This is phenomenal. You've changed my life, Dominic DeGrati. You actually have, actually.
Thanks. So 1,
likewise. 0 1 0. Yeah, yeah. I'm just writing exactly what you wrote.
Yeah. Speaking of Hallmark moments, did you see that Hallmark had to stop donating to Republicans who tried to commit a coup?
They wrote a letter to Josh Hawley demanding their money back.
They should have sent a card.
Yeah. Hallmark.
Why does Hallmark have a pack?
What is the online greeting card site that has those old-timey line drawings of like, like the 50s looking men and women, and they say like terrible things to each other, like the demotivator stuff? Yeah,
I know exactly what you're talking about. I send those back and forth to my spouse, but only the ones I've saved. Is it just demotivator?
Demotivator greeting. The demotivator is kind of like the 90s poster parody, but
yeah, vintage.
Yeah. one of them I saw was like, thank you for not jacking off into my shower when you crashed in my apartment, or something like that. It's just
God,
like
it's
super
horrible.
crude. Yeah.
Oh, it's rough.
Yeah. That was the thank you
Oh, so
part.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so this makes sense then. Totally with you. And really we just have to do it exactly the same number of times.
6. Yeah.
Yep.
Erasure face. That's what it should be called. It's great. We should call it eraser head face.
Okay, I'm gonna do that just for this. Erasure face.
Yeah. It's not eraser head, it's erasure face.
It's erasure face. Yeah, David Lynch would be proud.
Is that going to be our title card for the YouTube archive video?
David Lynch would be proud. Sure.
Or just like the weird looking chicken thing from Eraserhead.
I made a really good title card for 62, by the way.
I'm excited.
I'm gonna show it off in full resolution here because no one ever gets to see it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at our beautiful games.
Oh my gosh. Nice. Man, Division. It's just like people with guns in Washington D.C.
Yo, I started writing it up, and I was like, yeah, it's about a post-apocalyptic wasteland where you storm the Capitol in D.C. And I was like, oh no.
Yeah, and then you rescue the president only to subdue him.
I didn't even write about the president because I didn't want to get us banned from YouTube.
But the president is bad. The president is bad.
Yeah, but I figured if I wrote like, and you kill the president in the YouTube description, like actually we might get flagged off YouTube.
Yeah.
At least this week.
Wait, so okay, clarify this for me. You're saying, oh wait, that's what we said at the very beginning of the stream. Is that Deutsche Bank?
Deutsche Bank, yeah, they've parted ways with Trump. I guess they're like not doing any more money with him.
What does that mean though? They don't like own his money though? Like they're gonna give it back to him, right?
They're one of his biggest lenders, so I assume they are going to stop extending him lines of credit and call in their loans.
Oh, okay, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, which is good. I mean, more importantly, PGA backed out and said he's no good. So
let's get back to sports, shall we? Let's stick to sports.
Back to sports.
Yeah.
The only thing that matters is the golf Republicans stepping away from the Nazi Republicans, which I thought they were the same, but who knows?
Yeah. Good job, PGA.
The bar was really low.
That's pretty low. Yeah.
Okie doke. So we got a new buffer. Battery buffer? Face buffer. Eraser face buffer.
Yeah.
Erasure face buffer. And then we're going to need an erasure lock. Oops. And that's just going to be another location. Cool. Oh boy, are we going to have to pass this from the vertex shader to the fragment shader again?
Yeah.
So is that's just like the law?
It's not so much the law as it is just what mechanically makes sense. The vertex shader is operating on exactly 3 points in world space. The fragment shader is working on exactly 1 pixel in screen space. And so there's no immediate translation between the vertex shader and the fragment shader, except what you define in both of those as being the interface.
Oh, because this is actually, since we're outputting this, once it gets to the pixel, this is why it's able to interpolate at all, because we've associated them.
Yeah, when you declare those outputs, lines 25 to 27 is like, I want those 3 things to be interpolated into attribute values for every fragment on this piece of geometry that I'm creating.
Oh man, that was a big missing mental piece for me, but that makes a lot of sense now.
Yes,
yeah.
I'm glad.
Well, I think maybe it was last year we were just like trying to put the attributes into the fragment shader, being like, well, that's weird. Why aren't they showing up?
Well, it's funny because I actually think that, like, you remember Evan Wallace's grid shader for the grid, the terrain? Like, I don't know if he was passing because he was passing essentially the world space position from the vertex shader into the fragment shader, but we didn't see the vertex shader, so we were like very confused as to exactly what he was doing there. And that contributed to the confusion a lot.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna pull this over to Safari actually, where
no problem.
Switch between it. I just want to be able to switch between that and Miro a little faster.
No problem.
So this is still loading.
Okay, it's not crashing. That's
And
always
yeah,
great.
we haven't crashed it. Yeah, which is great. We actually added a whole attribute and it still worked.
Yeah.
I assume the attribute's even there.
So I think we just add an and to that if statement.
Mhm.
And then we say, what is it? A dot or v erasure dot x.
Huh?
Oh no, it's just v erasure.
Ah,
It's not even a v. It's just a value, right? It's just one
oh,
value.
right. This is,
It's a
yeah.
float. Yeah.
Mhm. Does that work for a part? Is this just not equal to 1?
Yeah.
We erased it.
Is it just crashed? Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Dimension mismatch. That's really interesting. Cannot convert.
Can we take a look at the renderer code again? The one that actually sets the attribute. I think we might have a 3 where it should be a 1.
Oh, you're totally right. Yep. Go down to our erasure lock.
Yeah, there you go.
Boom. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay, still unhappy. I think the actual program is failing to link. Yeah.
Okay. Can I convert in high 3p? Is it assume? Can we do medium p? Float medium p? I thought that's what line 40 is doing.
Yeah, well, and this can't convert from the in to the out. So this is the, oh, well, here's a problem.
Oh.
Oh, cool. Okay, that's great. Maybe this needs to be 1.0.
Oh, come on. Not equals 0. What if?
Let me just flip that to, okay, yeah.
Not equals 1. What? I thought it was if it was equal to 1. We should erase it, right? Oh, no. It's not equal to 1. We should draw the line. That's confusing.
Right. Yeah. So is there ever, looking at our erasure attributes, do they actually need to, do we need to pass in this entire coordinate set? Like, is it actually, is the first triangle 1, 1, 0, and the second triangle, wait, oh man, no, maybe not.
Well, it's the whole face that we're describing here, right? So we're describing both triangles here. Can we go back to the shader really quickly? Can we actually draw the value of the erasure, v erasure, into the red, like line 53?
Yeah. I'll draw into the red for everything.
Okay.
And let me undo some of our gnarly colors here, because
Yep. And then
interesting.
Yeah.
So that's not what I expected at all.
We don't have lighting operative, do we?
No. This is drawing from black to this. This is via erasure getting drawn.
Okay.
Oh, we do have lighting, but I assume if I draw this, the face is black. Yeah. So via erasure, I would have expected to be red all along this line, but it's concentrated up on this point. Huh.
What if we turn the rotation back on? Maybe we just screwed up the indices.
I think so, because it looks like it might have. How could we have gotten the same indice twice though? There's only 4 of them.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, could we be doing the wrong index into this? No, because the index buffer is handling all that for us. Yeah, let me turn rotation back on.
So that looks like what we
Interesting.
want, right? That was what we wanted.
What the fuck? Yeah, not that one. Come back to the good face. Yeah, there's a good face, but unfortunately, it's still drawing the line too. So I don't know.
I don't think it's drawing the line. I think it's just because we're using the same color for the line, and if we change the V erasure to the green element, maybe that's going to be a little bit clearer.
Totally.
Welcome to shader debugging. God, this is terrible.
This is how it happens, huh? I was
Yeah.
gonna say I'm gonna take out the lines. So some of them look great and some of them don't. That's really annoying.
Yeah.
Okay, so oops.
So maybe we goofed on our attribute assignment.
Let's I feel like this actually needs to be and less than V erasure and 0.96. Like we should do the same threshold as the lines. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And it's very unhappy about that.
Less than is a vector function. We just might be able to do less than or equal to or something like that.
Oh, fair.
Yeah.
One too many parens. I'm so glad. Hey, great. Totally worked.
Yeah. So this is what I was afraid of a little bit with this technique, is that the actual corners are going to be gone.
Yep. Good predicting.
And I don't know if there's a way around that, unfortunately.
Right.
So I suspect even if we were to get the attributes to line up with the indexes correctly, we would still run into this weird corner question, right?
Okay.
With this technique.
Lesson learned. Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes this it's not even fully shader based because we're adding attributes. I mean, I guess it's fair to say that it's fully shader based, but it makes the fully shader based technique really hard. Or at least we just haven't thought of the right solution yet. Which unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, whichever one you want to pick, brings us back to creating a line mesh, right?
I think we've sort of, without a geometry shader, I think we've beaten the dead horse on this one.
Yes. Here's why I don't hate the line mesh solution, is that in order for us to have even created that erasure face attribute, we would have to do analysis of the mesh and figure out like what value do we add to that erasure attribute. And because we're doing the analysis, we're iterating over the points of the mesh. We're doing all these kinds of things. And if we're doing that already, we can also just create another mesh, right? That's another option that we can do, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do feel fine about that because this entire thing depends on the same pre-computation for all of it.
Yeah.
I liked some of the things we were going to get out of just using the I want to do it in shares. It sounded cool. I liked that we were going to get like anti-alias lines of the same width. But like, yeah, maybe not today.
So this may be a geometry shader thing, but like if you look at the 3D modeling programs, they're able to get like even better wireframes than what we're doing. They're able to get like curved surfaces on their wireframes. And they call that a material. So clearly there is a way of doing it through a shader only technique. Maybe it needs the geometry shader because it needs some way of knowing. It needs to be able to. It needs to be able to analyze over 2 triangles worth of data at least, right? Or like the reason why the fragment shader ultimately is limiting is that we don't know anything about the neighboring triangle, and that's exactly what we need to know to be able to like remove that edge, right?
Yep, exactly. I'm really sad the ep width of the V normal didn't really do it for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
It would have been cool. Like, would we be able to know the discontinuity of that attribute? You know.
So I'm down to pre-compute. We might as well.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think what I was trying to argue for though is we'd have to pre-compute anyways because we needed that extra attribute,
Yeah.
or we needed to do barycentric coordinates, right? Which and the barycentric coordinates would have required. That was actually an even harder problem that I didn't know how to solve, which was the barycentric coordinates add a new attribute that you need to get right if you're going to use the index buffer.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the easiest way to get around that is to not use the index buffer at all and just say, look, I'm going to have one unique vertex per triangle
Mhm.
across the entire mesh, right? And so I'll basically just add 25% more, whatever the ratio is, right? What is it?
Which I don't know if are we using the are we using index buffers with our objects? I don't even remember.
Currently with the GLTF shader we are, because the GLTF shader is using whatever Blender feeds it, and Blender does output with index buffers.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but every mesh has an indices property, and the indices
Oh
property is
yeah.
like the index into the not the not the buffer array, the accessor array. There's accessors,
Mhm.
buffer views, and buffers, like three Russian doll ways of looking into binary data. You know.
Right. I honestly I couldn't remember which of those indices were actually the index array and which were just the fact that GLTF does everything as index arrays, it seems.
It does, or at least it'll respect.
Yeah.
No, I actually think it might do everything as indexes. I don't know if indices has to be there. Can you go to the GLTF document class? It might be under types.
I think that yeah, it's probably
Sorry,
just
it's
a
not named very well. And then if we look at the mesh,
there you go.
there should be like a mesh object, and it's a primitive. Okay, and a primitive. Oh, indices is optional, so maybe you don't have to use index buffers.
I think
That's
that's
interesting. Yeah.
it's optional. Oh, because attributes could just be yeah. Hmm.
If you don't use an index buffer, the implication there is you're using an index buffer whose values are exactly equal to their indexes. It's just like, it's 10 elements in the array, and the values in that array is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to use, it's whatever Blender decides to do. I think
Right.
that's our takeaway.
And then I was gonna say, going back to wireframe Blender, can we output our line mesh from Blender? Is that maybe an option for us, or is it a pre-computation we have to do in our loading?
Uh, if Blender offers it to you, I would be shocked. There might be
Yeah,
a way we can write a
same.
Blender plugin, which would be the best
Hmm.
thing. So I guess maybe we're hypothetically talking about three different places where this computation can happen. It
Yep.
can happen in Blender as a plugin, either already available or hello.
That's a render. Render and export are two different worlds for Blender.
It's true.
But it totally has like a wire material, doesn't it? Let's see what that gives us. Okay, I don't remember how to even get to materials in Blender. Do you just click all these things all the time too?
I
Because that's the only
do.
way.
I haven't been watching the videos yet, but probably should dive into that, or take like a full-on 3D modeling class, because it's not the worst thing not the worst skill to pick up if you're making a video game. Turns out.
We'd probably both have a lot of fun with it. Yeah.
Did
All
you
right.
ever like? You're much more of a visual artist than I am. Can you draw?
No.
Okay, but you can
No,
graphic design. You can quasi graphic design, right? And you can
well,
Photoshop.
I'm one of those people they call a UX designer, which means I have no visual design skills, but I can definitely like make a Photoshop look good.
And you can
Shout out
make
to my
like,
favorite UX designers. No way.
yeah, you can make like a cool iOS app, right? You can place the buttons in a way that looks attractive and balanced, right? Whereas
Yeah, but
this is what I made. This piece of shit right here.
they say my skill ceiling is very low on that though. Like actual proper UX designers and actual proper visual designers are like way up here, but I can fake it.
I'm not sad because honestly, our skill level across the board with everything that we've been doing on this project is probably close to the same ceiling. So
Oh, we're good. Yeah.
yeah, we're amateur for life. DIY, baby.
I'd like to think of it as a breadth first approach. Got a
Yeah.
little bit of everything going on here.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Jack of all trades.
Yeah, master of some, but not a lot.
Perhaps, yeah. Master of you plugging ES build into the build.
That you are the master of that, as far as I can tell.
Master of reading the getting started in the ES build talks.
Oh gosh. Okay,
I'll take
so yeah. Oh heck yeah. You saved us literal years of our lives.
that. Okay, so we're talking about three options of where to do the line mesh analysis. Either there's a way to write a Blender plugin.
Mhm.
That would be nice. Maybe hard to debug, but also like we'd get it for free every time. We wouldn't forget about it.
Yep.
Second place is the intermediate solution where we have a tool that runs on the command line, like an export tool, like that's not part of Blender, but does the same operation before it even touches
Mhm.
the game, right? So we add another mesh to the GLTF file.
Mhm.
Third option is we do it on load, which means that every time we run the game, we're repeating the work. But it means we don't have a lot of manual work. And
I don't think it's that much work either.
yeah,
I bet it'll be, especially if we're not using this like 10,000 triangle tank, like it's probably fine.
if our models are simple, then I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
Now it depends on how many. Now it multiplies over the number of models that we have over time, but like, still, like if we get like the original, like what did the Tron tanks look like? The Tron tanks were jank as
They're
hell,
great.
right?
Yeah.
Like these are even like way better than they were. Like look at the Stompy guys in the background, the Space Invaders dudes.
Oh, I love those so much.
That's
Yeah.
kind of more in line of what we're going for, right?
hmm hmm Yeah,
um,
the man, I feel like these must be the remastered graphics. Give me, I want the shitty,
yeah. Why
I
are
want the
yeah
original Tron tanks.
original Tron tanks? Yeah.
Did it actually look this good originally? That's amazing. Good for
Yeah.
them.
Maybe they actually this must be ray traced, right?
Oh, I think it had to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I still want these guys.
Yeah.
These are the
Yeah.
guys
These
I'm thinking
Stompy
of.
guys. Yeah. Yeah. Something like
hmm
that. Now that's not that many faces. That's not too many triangles, right?
hmm
So we're not even going. We're going for like lo-fi Tron. Yeah. Tron is
Tron is going to look better than our game.
Tron is too good for us.
Yeah, I think that's right. So simpler models,
Yeah.
doing this on the fly is not going to break the bank, especially because like it's a one-time computation, right?
It's one time per model. Yeah.
Yep.
Or one time per model per execution.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It may get painful if we change models, if we go to different levels, but I think by that time we'll probably start to do pre-baking, right? Like I think maybe up front, maybe what you're proposing is like, you know what? Let's not add to the tool chain right now. Let's just like add to the monolith that is our game. And if it gets slow, then we'll optimize later.
Yeah, and it's nice seeing that this is something that can easily be extracted. Like we wouldn't have to think that hard about it.
Yeah.
Where are our loader functions?
The loader functions are currently all in the GLTF index file, which is a problem because
Mm-hmm.
we don't get geometry that is processable by. So basically, what I'm saying is this is going to need to get refactored.
Great.
So when we, I think it's called like make buffer. I want to say. No, make mesh. Let's go into make mesh.
Yeah, that I saw. I saw make mesh and make node.
And what the hell is a render.mesh? I think it's just a VAO or something like that, right?
That's pretty useful.
Oh, yeah, it would almost be useful, except those are buffers. And if you go into the buffer, I think those are just like.
Oh no, it's just a well, okay.
Yeah, so you can't iterate over that. That's just like a number, right? So what we actually need is we need the GLT. Like I think those classes are fine, but the GLTF, this make mesh here needs to export an intermediate format that is the JavaScript versions of those buffers.
Yeah. Well, should we? Right. I was gonna say that it should not. We don't need to like store it in the triangle mesh forever because we're basically going to write our own version of this again, right?
Yeah, I think maybe the way that the reason why I did this is that like the GLTF format is like kind of designed to be directly plugged into OpenGL function calls directly. But what we were proposing is to stick a little shim layer between those two things so that we can analyze the mesh data and then essentially produce a second mesh, right? Where that's the proposal here. If we can try to work backwards from this angle, and maybe talk about the renderer really quickly.
Yeah, let's see what we got there.
Yeah. So when we render stuff, we pass in the name of a model, and then the name of the model corresponds to a root node, and the root node has a bunch of stuff in it. And so I think what we're kind of proposing is almost creating a parallel hierarchy. So for every like tree of like a node is like its mesh and then like all the child meshes. What we're proposing is to have a parallel hierarchy, but the meshes are line meshes rather than triangle meshes, right?
Okay. And you think doing that instead of sort of adding more children to the existing mesh makes sense? Because I feel like we've already got like, well, I guess we can't use the same index buffer probably. Our points, our vertices are going to be different with emissions, I guess.
We can add more children. We can. I think that's actually not a bad idea. I think you're.
Like we're basically embellishing the model with a wireframe child.
The render needs to treat those two meshes differently, though. So it needs some way of distinguishing between the two of them, because it actually, at least with the algorithm I'm thinking of, what it needs to do is it needs to shade. It needs to actually draw the flat faces with some flat, either a flat color, or it needs to draw it with just drawn to the depth buffer. And it needs to do that for all of the geometry, all of the triangle meshes first. And then it moves on to the line meshes.
That's a great point. So, okay. Right. That does sort of speak to doing them as two different things. Yeah. Okay. That convinces me. Thanks. Yeah, because nothing about this is like lines or triangles. So, okay.
Yeah. Now the thing is that the renderer. So basically, I think what we're proposing is at the level of the renderer, we just have maybe we establish some convention where when we load the model into the renderer, we call it like tank triangles. And then we also load in tank lines. And the renderer doesn't actually care about that. The renderer just says, give me a friggin' model. And then so there's got to be something outside the renderer that's feeding it these names and feeding it the models. So the knowledge of having these two different render passes and that kind of thing, maybe we keep outside the renderer, and maybe that's the business of like some model manager class that we haven't created yet, or it's the render manager in the game. Like there's a client class called the render manager that handles the render loop. Maybe that's what takes care of this. Yeah.
I think that makes sense because somewhere around here where we get the file and here where we set it, I do kind of want. I feel like they should give us two objects, or we should be setting them in a way such that there's the corresponding tank and line tank.
Or what it is that when we load the GLTF, maybe instead of loading it, what we do is, I'm sorry, this is the render. What I was thinking of is something else calls make node, like line 599 sits outside of the render, calls make node on the GLTF. Make node on the GLTF actually returns a JavaScript buffer that we can iterate over and like do analysis on. And whatever is doing that iteration creates the parallel node, right? And then it loads both the original triangle node and then the line node that it just created. Does that general architecture feel reasonable?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
I think of like what a good starting place is in 10 minutes.
That'll be tough. But
Yep.
one thing we could do is basically what we're saying is that the GLTF make node inside the index.ts that we have there.
Hmm.
I think what we're saying is that like this sucker should not be returning OpenGL buffers anymore.
I think that's correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're essentially saying that this returns like like JS GLTF or something.
Yeah, or we just redefine what it returns. Like it still can be a model
Yep.
node here, or yeah, you're right. Yeah, no, actually, I totally concur with you. It's no longer the renderer dot model node. It is the GLTF dot model node or something like that. Whatever we
Yep.
want to name it.
Okay. Yeah.
And we're actually in a GLTF package right now. Like if you hit Command Shift E, we're actually in the GLTF module here. So like we can just
Hmm.
create a model node class inside this.
Oh, great. Yeah, let's just do that then.
Okay, and the thing we want to make sure we distinguish it from, and maybe this is where we need to like start a different hierarchy, is that if you look at the types.ts, you're gonna see a
Mhm.
node interface already there.
Yep.
And what we want to make sure we distinguish
Mhm.
is that this node interface is the JSON file. And so there's all the stuff in the JSON file, and
Mhm.
that's in types.ts. Maybe this should get renamed to document.ts so that it's like here are all the details about like objects that are in the document.
I
Um,
think that, yeah, because
it,
this is really the core.
it's the core
Yeah.
thing, yeah. And then the model node, whether that's in GLTF or not, like I think what we're talking about, I see why you called it JS GLTF. That actually makes a lot of sense. It's like this.
I think,
For now,
yeah,
we can
because
just call it
it's,
that. Yeah, it's basically halfway between what the renderer wants, which is VAOs and OpenGL stuff, and what is
mhm.
represented by the raw GLTF file. We need something in between that we can do basically post processing on.
Yeah, and it's, I feel like essentially this interface, but actually the buffers are addressable.
That's 100% correct. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's just start from there. So this will be, we will come up with a better name for that.
Yep.
But TF, got our mat4s. Should rename these.
Would it
I
be
can use
too
rename symbol. I'm
confusing?
going to do it. Yeah.
Would it be too confusing if we made a different folder in the renderer called JSGLTF and then just
Probably not.
and we could name that whatever, and then all these classes can basically share the same names as their sister classes or their cousin classes in the GLTF, but they're just going to be under a different namespace.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, I like that. You don't think that'll be too confusing? We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll see.
Fair enough. Not source common? Oh,
Mesh
tilde common?
primitive. Uh,
Oh, tilde renderer common.
yeah.
Great.
What are they
Okay,
complaining
so
about?
the double quotes.
Oh, oh, I like it. Please complain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so buffer is actually like these are, do we know what they contain? It actually depends on, fuck, they're not, I mean, these are really just arrays of anything.
I think we can start to make assumptions about the GLTF format here and just call them
Okay.
float32 arrays. And
Actually, I guess okay. We'll call them float32 arrays, but we actually need to know what to turn them into to
and
convert to GLTF.
indices is going to be uint16 arrays.
Ah, thank you.
generally what it is. And what we can do is like when we parse the GLTF file, what we actually want to do is emit these things, the JS GLTF, and we
Hmm.
can just throw an exception if the GLTF file doesn't conform to what we want, or we can perform conversion. Right? There's a couple different things that we could try to do. We just say like
I
fuck
was gonna
you, I'm not going to do what you tell me. You know. Um,
say, yeah, was it, where's our, right? Because it's just that these things come in types, right? Like, what do we do for the vec3 type?
um,
I
I
guess
guess
that's just about,
we just say we expect a particular thing.
okay. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, really, this turns into three
Yeah.
floats, so we can work with that. Yeah.
Or the other option is that we have to encode this information into the JS GLTF format, and
That's
at
what I was
that,
thinking. Yeah, I feel like we needed to have like position type as vec3 or something.
yeah. Well, you know, honestly, Dom, if we wanted to do it this way, then maybe we don't have to have this separate JS GLTF namespace, and instead, what we can do is maybe represent the GLTF format a little bit more faithfully, because GLTF already has this stuff. It has all these descriptors in
Mm-hmm.
it. Um, the only thing it doesn't do is stick the actual buffer data inside of. It doesn't have this hierarchical structure that we have here, and it doesn't stick the actual buffers in there. So another thing we could do is just like have like a decoded GLTF document format that is a little bit more like a tree, so it's easier to iterate
Mm-hmm.
over.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's actually literally just what we're looking at here, but instead of having accessors and buffer views, we just create new buffers in memory and and just have them right
Like
then and there.
inline them where expected. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Because right now they're not.
Yeah. I guess, I mean, I don't dislike this if we can make these assumptions
Yeah.
though. Like,
Well,
it sounds pretty clear, and this does go straight into the renderer, right? Like, we know that this is a vec3. We know these are
yeah.
vec3s.
Let me propose another thing to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of in line with what we can do in 2 minutes. Can we Google your GLTF loader library?
Oh yeah, totally.
Because potentially this already gives us what we want.
That's a great point.
You said there's one that has a reader as well. Is that this one?
This is actually a totally different one.
GLTF reader was it called?
It was like it was like a generic model loader format. Oh, loaders.gl. Here we go. Yeah. GLTF loader and writer. Yeah.
Okay. And then what interfaces does this actually give us once it spits it out?
Yep. Post processing will be. They're not clear on what post processing is. Which will link data from binary buffers into the. Hey, that's pretty cool. I really would like this to work.
Not a great sign, right?
No, it's a small warning for sure. Let's just hit the actual source and see. I mean, people are using it. It's
Okay.
good start. I'm just going to try to dig into see if there's a GLTF specific.
This is a big library. It's starting to give me a little bit of sticker shock, I think.
I'm with you because like I think that's why I didn't try to push this one to her because like this does everything.
Okay.
Like, does it need to?
So what we've got, I think our homegrown thing is still not the worst thing in the world because it's like a little bit of nitty gritty crap, but it's not also the worst thing in the world. So
Mhm.
if we go back to the GLTF types thing, document, yeah.
Yep.
So if we go into buffers, for example,
Mhm.
like we could post process that
Mhm.
and just rather than it being a URI and a byte length, it's just a browser array buffer. And the array buffer is the lowest level JavaScript data chunk that you can have.
Mhm.
And I think it's essentially an alias over UN8 array, but you can pass an array buffer into views, right? I don't know if you know this about JavaScript, but you can basically say, I want to interpret this as a float32, or I want to interpret this as a UN16.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that before because I think we did that. We did like a new array buffer and it's got them all as prototypes on it, right?
Uh,
Oh, this thing reloads
it
every
either
second.
has that, but I know that if you have a float32 array, um, you can. Why was it reloading every second?
I mean, great question.
Um,
Something is reloading over here really fast.
is it
Huh.
possible that my deduplication thing is not working correctly? Maybe there's a file that's getting written. Oh no, but that doesn't make sense. Otherwise, this would just reload every single. Yeah, I don't know. Something weird happened
Hmm.
in our branch.
Yeah, I've done a lot of weird stuff to this though, so
Okay.
that's fine. All I wanted to see was the prototypes on array buffer because yeah, these views are built into it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then if you create a float32 array, you can actually do, like, if you call that variable x, you can do x dot array buffer, and it gives you the underlying memory essentially.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So that's more or less like what we could do with GLTF, is that we could have the parsed, like, essentially we want a slightly more convenient version of this document that makes it easier to iterate through stuff. And how deeply you take that is a design question, right? Because it's still not super convenient, right? Like if we just updated this to like we still need this particular interface because we need to represent the JSON precisely, right? Like this is essentially what we're using to describe the JSON structure, but there's some intermediate loaded version of this that we haven't designed yet, that we haven't written yet, that we can kind of like pick and choose how we want to implement. And so, for example, do we want to expose accessors and buffer views? Maybe, because the accessor, for example, is what tells us whether it's a vec3 or not, right?
Mhm. Or is that the buffer view byte length? Oh
Uh,
no, yeah, both.
a little bit of both, yeah.
Yeah.
And at some point we have to make concessions on how generic we want to make it, because like GLTF is an incredibly generic format that if you took it to its limit would be extreme pain in the ass to deal with.
Mhm.
So one example is that if in our current loader, if byte stride is defined like 124,
Mhm.
if that's defined and it doesn't exactly equal, like if it's a vec3, if it doesn't exactly equal 12 bytes, I just throw an exception. It's like, I don't want to deal with interleaved data. I just didn't want to deal with it. So,
Totally.
Blender's not going to
Yeah.
output that. I'm not going to deal with it. Um,
And
so
Blender's not.
yeah. So if you wanted to, like, there's a lot of different ways to slice this. If you
Hmm.
didn't want to be super generic and support everything. What's interesting is that the GLTF transform library, which is what I started with, the reason why we didn't end up using it is because they're not null safe. Um,
Hmm. It's too bad.
this person, I guess his name is Don McCurdy, is on the OpenGL steering committee, or he's on the GLTF steering committee or something like that. So he's like,
Oh,
this is a
rad.
pretty legit.
Hmm.
This is like straight from the horse's mouth, and even he doesn't respect GLTF that much, right? Like, so let me give you one example. Is that the point of all of this buffer view crap is that you don't have to redefine the same buffer twice in memory.
Hmm.
He doesn't care about that. He's just like, I'm going to load the buffer twice if there's like multiple buffer views, right? He doesn't like cache it in one location and point at it. He doesn't deal with that. He's just like, you know what? I'm just going to recreate the buffer. Um, so even the official, what the semi-official JavaScript library for dealing with this format is not generic enough to deal with its like intricacies.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I, 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 I think it is. I think maybe this format is more generic than it needs to be, which I think is a good design decision on their part, but it just makes it
Yeah,
a little
because
bit unclear.
we
Yeah.
Well, it's nice that we can choose how much we want to conform to it too,
Yeah.
because like, yeah, and maybe enough rope to hang ourselves. Uh, okay, great. Well then, I guess we have Steve on next time, but
Yes.
uh,
Steve tomorrow. That's a good reminder. I'll reach out to him and make sure that he remembers. Just because it's been about a week since I talked to him about it.
and a lot has happened in that week.
It was yeah, kind of easy to forget about Jeff and Dom make a game when we did we dodge fascism, or do you think that there's still more surprises coming?
Did we dodge? I mean, I feel like we're just fascism progresses, man. Like, I
So
feel like for all of us were saying like, hey, these guys are really fascist for the last 4 years, and then they turned out to be really fascist. Like, I feel like we didn't dodge it.
are you still anticipating like the smarter Trump?
100%.
Okay,
It might be that Josh Hawley
it
dude,
might be Josh Hawley. Yeah.
though he doesn't seem very smart either.
No,
So
he seems a little bit like he doesn't really have the juice.
yeah,
The
but
thing that
like
Trump had for him,
someone.
yeah, the thing that Trump had for him is being in the public eye. The person it would be is like Joe Rogan, right? The thing is, I actually
Yeah,
think Joe Rogan politically is actually pretty pretty
he kind of
lefty.
is like the populist shit that Trump claimed to be, but actually wasn't.
Yeah,
Like
he's
Joe
like
Rogan actually,
universal medical care. He's like
yeah.
he's definitely like
I think
yeah.
of Joe Rogan as an actual populist who like
Yes.
is kind of conservative,
Yeah, his
and I don't love him, but like
yeah.
I don't know, he could be worse.
Yeah.
He,
Yeah,
he palled around with Bernie. Like I respect that.
yeah. I mean, Bernie was his first choice, but then he was weird, and he's like,
Mhm.
Trump might be my choice over Biden, and I'm like, this is a very idiosyncratic political philosophy, very
Yeah,
non-traditional.
right.
So I think he's one of those like kind of like
He might just be an edgelord. Like he might
yeah.
just be trying to pick like the
Uh,
most controversial
the
opinion.
credit I will give him is that if you actually sit down and listen to his podcast, they're pretty tame actually. Like he's actually a very welcoming host, and he's quite thoughtful in his questions that he asks people. So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
when I don't see him as the source of conspiracy theories or like Rush Limbaugh level bullshit.
no,
So
no. But he will have Alex Jones on his podcast though. He's not exactly signal. He's not like 100% like I agree. I endorse this, but he is signal boosting by like having these people on.
it's weird.
But
Yeah.
then he'll have like
And it's
Edward
just,
Snowden on, and he'll have Bernie Sanders on. He's like, man, I'm way behind you guys. So it's like a
did
very
you
weird.
see Snowden like took this moment to pop back up and be like, I think we shouldn't ban people from platforms.
Yeah. So it's not Snowden
Man,
himself is a little bit of an interesting figure too. I think he might be.
he's a weird take machine, is what he is. I I
Yeah.
also like him, but like he's a weirdo.
Yeah, and I also think that Snowden is a bit of a showman. I think he's revealed himself to be like enjoy the limelight that he's created for himself, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it does make you question his motivations from sometimes. Okay, we have
Hmm.
Steve on next time.
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
he can tell us how wrong we're doing our 3D, which
exactly.
will be
He's
really
like,
great
we'll
actually.
ask him what he thinks about. Does he think we've seen the worst of it, or is it? Is Josh Hawley the next guy? And Steve will have thoughtful things to say about that. But
Oh good, I'm excited.
we'll talk to him about wireframe rendering. I think that's actually an interesting question to ask him. I
Mhm.
feel like this GLTF bullshit that we're talking about right now does not pass muster for the stream. So I think we should just try to grind it out off stream. And then maybe the edge elimination stuff is interesting enough for stream, but even that,
I think so.
okay, yeah,
I think if we can maybe putting together the line renderer is and that'll take care of that for us. But I think that's interesting
yeah.
enough. Yeah.
Oh man, and then once we're there, we kind of are out of excuses. Well, we need to do terrain still and particle emitters. I'd say that those are still like kind of the sub things. Like I think we need a new level designer
Yep.
and a
I'm
new
really I'm really excited to see particle emitters because I want them to be shaders. So I think this is going to be a really great tool for that.
yeah, yeah. Particle emitters would be cool, or at least the Rendertoy gives us a basis for writing other tools that are similar to it, and eventually this may
Yep.
become a template for other tools.
Yeah. I think we should write an animated grass shader to really give our terrain some nice motion. That
Oh,
Ghost of Tsushima grass shader.
oh, fuck yes.
just any grass shader? Grass shaders just seem cool. Yeah, I
Yeah.
want some of this in there. Anyway, I'll keep us distracted with the visual flare. You got it.
Okay. Well, you did such a great job on that particle tool. You should do one in 3D now. We've got alpha
Yeah,
blending and everything.
so I'm gonna these are questions I'm gonna have, but like how do you I'm not sure I quite understand how you do particle state with a shader.
Well, it's not 100% shader. It still meshes. All of
Oh,
that is
okay.
still all of that remains the same. You just have the same attributes, or maybe you have more attributes for your particles if you want to do that, and you define a new
Hmm.
format for that. And we just have and then I think probably what you would do is like you'd have different groups of particles that used different
Hmm.
shaders for different effects that you wanted, something like
Hmm.
that. But we
Oh,
could just start with like the same shader and just emits quads or triangles of this of
hmm.
the same that are uniform color, and then take it from there.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've got our
All
homework
right.
cut out for us. If we didn't
Yes,
already,
indeed.
by trying to make a game.
Well, happy Monday.
Yes. Oh God,
Yeah,
it's
I'll
only
see you back
Monday.
here Thursday. Dude, I know. This is a long Monday.
It's been a long.
Forgive me for the brain farts
It's
today.
a
This really
long.
was
No,
a
no, no.
long
I
one.
don't. Whatever, dude. Like, it's been a long Monday. It's been
Good.
a long January, and
It's been a long
it's been a
2021.
long March. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're on day 315 of March. I saw
Yeah.
yesterday. Someone was
It's
tweeting
Pi
yesterday
Day.
like it's Pi Day.
Fuck, dude. It's a long march in both senses of the word.
Yep, yep, indeed. Whew. Well, have an excellent night. Play some games.
Yep. All right. See you, everybody.